Give me just a moment. Okay, cool. All right, Angelica, you take it away.
All right. Well, my name's Angelica. I'm with Goodwill Industries of San Antonio, and on our campuses, we have to wear masks 100% of the time. So since I'm at work, I have my mask on. I'm sorry. I don't get to see a smiling, give a smiling face like the rest of you guys do. So welcome to the general membership meeting of the Digital Inclusion Alliance of San Antonio. I wanted to start this welcome off because we have some new participants with a quick definition of the digital divide, a little bit of history on the Alliance, and a little bit more about how you can get involved. So the digital divide is an uneven distribution of access to the use of or the impact of digital communications, basically a gap between those who have access to the internet and own and know how to use a computer and those who do not. This is a social and an economic inequality in our community, or inequity in our community. The San Antonio Digital Inclusion Alliance was formed in May of 2017, and we currently have representatives from government, education, commercial sector, and nonprofit organizations, all working to fulfill our mission of bridging the gap through inclusive growth. We're committed to advancing digital inclusion in San Antonio. If you'd like to learn more about DIASA or see how you can be involved, you can go to our website, which is digitalinclusionsa for San Antonio.org, or check us out on Facebook with the @diasa.org username. Today, Terrence Wilson of IDRA will be our first presenter, and the title of his presentation is How Digital Inclusion Policy Impacts Students and Family Engagement. Terrence, are you ready?
I am ready.
It's all yours.
All right. Well, thank you, Angelica, for having me, and thank you all for being on the call today. As you mentioned, I am an employee of IDRA, the Intercultural Development Research Association. For those of you all that don't know us, we are based right there in San Antonio, and I'm here representing my colleague, Michelle Vega, who is a very active member with your alliance. And my role at IDRA is that I coordinate our regional policy and community engagement work. And so from that lens, I have an opportunity to talk with families and young people and students all over the South. Our region that I cover is 11 states in DC, basically from DC and Virginia down the coast of Florida and over to Texas. So got a lot of area that we cover. And the idea that we are all dealing with figuring out how to engage families despite the digital divide is something that I've seen across all of the region, all of the schools that we're working with currently. And so I just wanted to bring a little bit of information about the work that we've done, some of the ways that we've looked at this, some of the opinions that we've had, and maybe just make a couple of recommendations around different ways to think about how you can still connect with families and young people, and to do the good work that you all are doing on behalf of the schools, and how we can use technology to help bridge that gap and close that digital divide. And so I first wanted to mention that, one of the ways that we've gone about this is that, we've thought it was very important to make sure we're hearing directly from those people that are impacted. And I think in all of our work, it's really important to center young people, to center students, to make sure that we're not making decisions for folks, without talking to them, nothing about them without them, right? And so I think it's really important that we approach those, our interventions in that way, right? Whether it's digital divide or really anything that we're doing in the schools. And so IDRA at the end of last school year and over the summer, we took a survey where we talked to, over 100 families, students and parents to hear about how they were dealing with numerous effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and how they're adjusting to their educational needs. And as you all can most likely expect, there was a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of anxiousness around what was going to happen with their young people as a result of the pandemic, not only just with health, but really as it pertains to the education that they're going to receive. And it's been something that folks have been struggling with since the spring happened and having to adjust on the fly. But even over the summer, and even despite all the planning and all the plans that have come out from our individual states, school districts, I want to let you know, schools are still struggling with how to engage families and how to reach students. And so, some of the themes that came out were not only just from the difficulty from the educators and from the administrators in reaching students and their families, but also the way that parents are struggling to understand the technology that they've been forced to deal with. So that's one thing that I want to lift up, is that often we think about digital divide in terms of access, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of devices, right? Do you have the programs and the devices to operate the technology? But I want to let you know that there's a real human infrastructure that we have to work on developing. I've been in conversations with grandparents, right, who, still use an AOL or Yahoo or whatever email they're using, right, if they use email at all. And so making sure we have an idea to think not only just about the infrastructure itself, the connection, the Wi-Fi, the devices, but also how are we helping families adjust to this environment? Folks that have not
Oh,
necessarily.
babe, I'm sorry. I'm taking notes on another meeting. 1 second.
Oh, okay. That's all right. Um, and so I think that there's a lot of fear that people have about their young people, their students falling behind, and I think a lot of that can be addressed and ameliorated if we're giving folks resources to do that. So one of the districts that we work with in North Carolina, they developed a help desk, not just for students, but for families who didn't know how to access their Zoom, right? They could text a number or call a number, and they could have a help desk to help them with the technology resources. Oftentimes we think about supporting the students to get on, but the parents, especially for younger students in elementary school, right, they're the ones that are going to have to be doing a lot of this. So I wanted to uplift that as one of the areas that folks need to focus on, or should focus on, if you want to be effective in your engagement strategies. Another area that came up in the conversations has been around differences and disparities in access. So part of what the digital divide is not just a poverty issue, right? It's also along racial lines, lines of national origin, right? There are differences in the amount of access that families have to technology. And it's really important for us, we thought, to highlight that it's not the assumptions that people will make is that folks then with limited economic resources, are not going to be able to participate in these activities. And we just challenge them because that is not a reason why you can give up on reaching students. And I know it goes without saying, but we've heard school folks say, well, these folks have to work, or these folks, they're not going to be involved because they don't have internet. And so it's not enough to stop there. It's to really think about what things can you do to support those families. But it's not just economic resources, right? There's also disparities that we see with African American students, with Latino students, right, in the ways that the ways that they're being engaged, right? And a lot of it we see is the method of engagement, but it comes from knowing your parents, and it comes from knowing your communities, right? So you might have a community that's low tech. You might have a community that doesn't typically engage with one another on, Facebook or on social media. They might have a text chain or use the phone for those kinds of activities. And so you really have to do, like I mentioned before, you have to make sure they're at the center. The folks that you're serving are at the center. So if they're a low tech community, then you go to them in low tech ways. And I know that seems kind of, easy to understand, or that would be a duh, no duh kind of moment. But a lot of times school districts, different entities have a way that they want to engage that works for them. Right? Well, it's easiest for us to put it on the website, so we'll put it on the website. It's easiest for us to put a video. Let's do a video. That might not be the best way that works for your parents and for your communities that you're in. So it's really important to know your communities, to have that trust. And I think one of the ways that we have been encouraging folks to build continued engagement is to have opportunities for two-way engagement, right? So often what we've heard when we've done studies and when we've done collected information from communities, oftentimes there's one-way communication via these virtual platforms, right? There's a video that's put out, there's information that's posted on the website, there's things like that the folks can access. But it doesn't give opportunity for authentic two-way engagement. And we think that's really the goal that you should be pursuing in your digital engagement strategies, right? It's for that not only can you deliver information to connect to other people and let them know what's going on in the schools, but also there's a way for you to receive information, right? So it might be Zoom office hours, it might be virtual town halls, it might be one-on-one, parent-teacher conferences that you organize on Zoom, or things like that that allow for two-way communication. And then the last thing that I will say, because I know that I got a long meeting and a lot of things planned, and I'll take some questions. But the other thing that I will say is that it's really important to find people where they are, right? And so, as I mentioned before, there are some communities that are low tech, but there are some communities that the best way to get a message out is to find that one person who's on Facebook all the time, who's on social media all the time, is to have a good connector to folks in that community. And you can find that person in a lot of different ways, but oftentimes you have to go to where the people gather, the community gathers, and it may be a virtual space, it may be a physical space, but it's on us as education folks who are trying to reach out to students and families to make that extra step and to realize that not every family engages the same. And we can't use the lack of access as an excuse to not reaching our students and not engaging our students. Is going to require some additional work, but there are ways that you can be supported. IDRA supports folks who are working to try to reach folks through family engagement, trying to figure out new strategies to do that. And there are a lot of different ways that you can do that and be effective. But it's vitally important right now. Even though we've come out of the spring and we've learned a lot of lessons, I'm here to tell you that this work is definitely ongoing. And it's going to take a lot of collaboration, but you're not going to be able to do it without the families that are going to be impacted. If you come up with the best plan about how to roll out infrastructure and how to give devices, and you don't know if you haven't had a conversation with your communities to understand whether that's going to work for them, then you're missing the ball in some respects. So that's kind of what I've been hearing from my vantage point in terms of virtual engagement and the digital divide and family engagement. It is vitally important. I definitely encourage you all to continue doing this good work. Using technology is the best that we have in a lot of these circumstances, right? It's the best way to reach people right now, in this environment that we're in. And so we've got to figure out ways to make it work for us and work for the folks that we're trying to serve. And so IDRA is here to help. I'm here to help. But I definitely hope you all, if you're new to the group, that you continue to engage with this great group who's trying to give you strategies and ways to keep doing that and doing that effectively.
Thank you so much, Terrence.
Questions if we have some time. I don't know how much time you want to spend. But.
Oh yeah, we have some time allotted for questions, and I think we've got about maybe 10 to 15 minutes for questions. So I guess I have a question.
Yeah.
I think that at the federal level and at the state level, from a policy perspective, we're in a way you're taking a bad situation into something that's good, right? Nobody ever would think that COVID-19 would be a good thing to happen. But in a way, it provided a lot of awareness into what we're doing with digital inclusion and the advocacy work that we've been doing over a long period of time. How do you think that may change the level of seriousness when it comes to policy that is shaped in Austin and in DC with respect to obviously helping students and families?
I think it's, as you mentioned, this is a terrible situation to be in, but it is an opportunity. And I think that some of the divisions that we've seen in the digital divide have started to be addressed with federal investment via the CARES Act and other kinds of federal programs that have come through that were specifically addressed on the pandemic. But now what is important for us to do is to evaluate, okay, this money that we spent, was it effective? Did it help to close that divide? And if it did, we should be investing more in those strategies, right? We might not have done it otherwise. We might have continued on as we were before. But now that we have had this opportunity to invest, let's see if it's working, right? And even if it's not, if they've given us money toward it and it's still not working, that's even more evidence that we need to be rethinking our strategies toward it. But I do think that There is an opportunity for us to be strategic with our investments, especially if they're working. And I know that a lot of the things that folks have done, have increased engagement, the ability for folks to be connected. So it's actually a good thing for, people that have been disconnected in certain ways, right? They've had access to items, and there's been investment in communities that hasn't typically been there. But I think to sustain that effort, we've got to show and quantify the impact on, these students, on how they feel, how connected they feel to their community, right? How connected they feel to their school, and eventually on the academic outcomes that they receive, right? And so I think it's going to be very important for us to do that.
Absolutely, Terrence. I hear stories just the other day about, students that never came back after spring break. I mean, and to me, that is really kind of what resonates with me the most about this environment that we're in now. And I think it just elevates and escalates the importance of these strategies that we need to be tackling from all different angles, whether you're part of a school board and you're shaping policy there at the local LEA level, or you're at the state level, if you're working in the federal space. I think that there's just a tremendous amount of work we need to be doing to try to catch all these folks that are basically falling off the map in a sense, and we want to bring them back into the fold, right?
Absolutely. And you've got to know who those students are. There have been a couple of school districts that have done a really good job of tracking the engagement with, when a student has a contact with the teacher, then that item is tracked, right? And when a teacher reaches out and there isn't a contact, that's tracked. That's not the case in every school district, right? And so a lot of the districts are, like I mentioned, they're putting things out. They say, oh, we're engaging because we put it on our website, we have these things, and it's only reaching a certain subset of the population, right? You don't know what you don't know because those folks aren't there and aren't participating. So I think it's really important for us to keep track of who those students are when we're engaging with them and how it is. And then if it doesn't work, for us to be able to, understand that and to change and be adaptable to the situation. And again, like I said, different communities engage differently, and it's important for us to not be so rigid in the ways that we think that folks should communicate. And I will admit, I'm a millennial, right? I think that virtual engagement is amazing, and I do all of my, if you could just keep me on the internet and avoid my phone, I don't have to call anyone. That's perfect for me. But that's not how all of our communities operate. So we have to be, even as tech people, we have to be willing to push the non-tech option if it's appropriate.
I think that's totally perfect, and it's relevant. It completely is. Does anybody here have other questions for Terrence? Please, you can come off mute and ask away.
I just put one in the chat, and it's probably better written there. But I was just gonna say I've watched a lot of nonprofits, and like particularly United Ways or 211s develop tech support hotlines, and people are calling for these left and right. The National Digital Inclusion Alliance has been creating and kind of organizing these digital navigators programs, which take a slightly more holistic look to tech support, where it's not just, figuring out how to turn on your computer, but also figuring out how to get internet. And they have a model that kind of builds on what you said, Terrence, that looks at the whole family. My thought, though, from a policy perspective, is that I feel like this should be a municipal asset or a city resource. I mean, it's not all that different from a hotline to get you internet, or to get to like fix your heating, or I'm just thinking, like, is there a pathway for cities to invest in this? And have you seen anything in your regional work that San Antonio could look to for a model?
Yeah, so oh, sorry, go ahead. Was there someone else wanted to speak up? Feel free.
Well, no, Terrence, it's Jordana. I'll give the example that we're working on with the demonstrations that we already have funding for, our help desk, student-run help desk. But I can give that after you answer Adam's.
Okay, well, that's a really good point, Adam. Thank you for bringing that up. And I think that it's a really good opportunity for partnerships. I just wrote an article, or I'm in the process of writing one, and our Learning Goes On, that talked about some good examples of places that are doing some innovative strategies around engaging folks. And one of the places is Guilford County Schools in North Carolina. So they actually partnered with their local municipality to talk about not only the places where the school's offering free Wi-Fi, but the areas where the city offered free Wi-Fi. And they had a map that talked about, okay, if you live in this area, you're this close to the city Wi-Fi, or this close to the school Wi-Fi. They set up like, they called them, they had smart buses that would go, and then they had the name. I can't find the name of it in this document, but they had these places, these learning zones, essentially, where the city would sponsor, in conjunction with the school, a place where not only students could go, but families could go that could have access. And you can go to your libraries and stuff like that, but these were more frequent in places where folks would be. And so I think it really is a good point. I think that there are places throughout the nation that are partnering, because one of your cities often have places where they offer digital access, right? It might be through the library, it might be, in other city buildings, it might be other places like that. And so those places should also be folks should be made aware of them, and you should be partnering with school systems to make sure that folks have access to technology through those places that the city offers, as well as the schools. And then also just realizing that, like, we all talk about students and, the way that schools are operating. There are a lot of adults, right, who don't have children in the schools, that still need to have access to, digital resources to operate in today's world. So I think it's really important. The city has an interest in all of its citizens, including those that have kids in the schools and not in the schools, right, being able to know where they can access this technology and teaching them how to use it. So that's a really good point. I definitely can look more into it. I agree with you wholeheartedly, though. Cities should definitely have a seat at the table in making these strategies come to life.
So Terrence, this is Jordana, and I've been working with Michelle actually from your office on this. But in the proposal that we had, to the city for the private wireless networks to close the homework and remote learning gap, it's basically based, like you said, it's based on partnership, sharing infrastructure resources. But we also built into that the student-run help desk, and it's called the Digital Inclusion Scholars Program. And now it's fully funded. Besides the CARES Act, kind of recovery and response money, the 27 million for the connectivity for the low-income students across 50 low-income zip codes. We have now developed pretty fully what the help desk is going to look like. So students will get a paid internship. They'll get actual training in IT and certification. It'll be based at Texas A&M University, San Antonio, with the ability to work virtual as well. But basically the help desk for the starting out, right, for the new people, students and their parents and teachers who are going to be on the new network, right, newly connected to fixed internet at home, will be able to call, right, for all the things, so they'll get training in customer service and IT and official certification from Texas A&M. And it's going to be high school students that are in the schools, Lanier and Edgewood, that are going to be participating, as well as middle school students from Gus Garcia Middle School in Edgewood, and the college students, of course. Alamo colleges are going to be invited as well. They got the first grant that I wrote was for the Lanier project, so there was $325,000 for that. Now we have a much more significant grants for the rest of it, right? But basically, investing in our own, like I think you're alluding to, and that's just what we need to do in community development, right? Is invest in our own, create this inclusive economy, right? Somebody said, oh, well, we could just hire out, and we were planning to just hire a firm, to come to do that, and that, to me, that would be just a huge loss of investing in our greatest asset, right? Our students and low-income students from the lowest income schools to get this training. Besides that, it's going to be other experiential learning is going to be built into it, where they're going to be working with tech leaders in coding and computer programming, and they're going to be able to test their own applications that they create, solving some of our biggest challenges, right, on their own network. So especially the Edgewood demonstration for that, because we have some flexibility there, because we're using the backhaul fiber of the school itself. So we have a lot of flexibility. So we built that in. It's designed to grow, right, and serve the whole city as this rolls out. But it's truly based, like you said, on partnership, and that was the whole proposal, right, that we had to close the homework and remote learning gap. Is let's bring out the best and the assets of all our partners, right? You have the city, you have the school districts, you have the organizations that are part of Digital Inclusion Alliance, and the universities and so forth, and community college. Let's bring all their assets. And it turned out that as we talked about it, and Texas A&M was the first entity that we talked to about it, and they already had a model for a help desk for their own students. So they were able to build on that and include now the high school and junior high students. So it's a win-win when you work in partnership, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just kind of perfect it and create more support for it and invest in your own. So that's one great model. And Texas A&M, by the way, will also be doing the evaluation for the demonstrations, but also, going forward, they're going to be doing the evaluation so we can understand all the parts of this, right, from the connectivity part of it to the outcomes for students and their teachers and parents. And so we're going to have a very sophisticated evaluation to tell the story and to learn from for moving forward from the demonstration to more broadly across the city. So that is just an example of the assets in our community and investing in those, and knowing that one entity, they might be an expert on the infrastructure part of it, but they don't necessarily have the other parts of it, right? But between us, all these organizations, IDRA, Texas A&M, they're working together on the evaluation, IDRA and Texas A&M and this alliance, the Digital Inclusion Alliance, on the help desk and student digital inclusion scholars program, and some of our great organizations, city education partners and others, right? So now we have almost, goodness, it's definitely 2.6 million that has already been committed, and it's about 2 million for these additional components, right? Because it's designed to cover the three legs of the stool of digital inclusion and evaluation, the fourth leg, I would say.
Thank you so much, Jordana, and we're really excited about that project and all the prospects that come out of that. I want to be conscious of time so we can kind of keep on moving. So please, Terrence, by any means, if you don't mind dropping your email address into the chat bar, because I know that maybe a lot of folks on here have a lot of questions for you, or involved with the work that they do in their own organizations. And I think one of the things that we want to do here is open that door for sharing of resources and knowledge. So thank you so much for joining us. And obviously, please stick around for our call. So the next part of our agenda is basically what we have is a call to action. And what we want to do is provide you guys with two files that I'll drop here into the chat in just a second. And I'm going to just screen share just real briefly. Essentially, here's what I prepared, and this is the reference for it right here, is that on September 11th, you guys may have heard about this, 88 legislators in the state of Texas wrote to Governor Abbott requesting that that he support a development of a statewide broadband plan. And this is incredibly important in our state if we want to do anything with respect to digital divide when it comes to infrastructure or devices or digital literacy and adoption. So we wanted to make everybody that was on this call aware of this really awesome letter that was put together. And I'm going to drop it in the chat so you guys have a copy of it and some of the points that they make. But one of them is that 44 states in the United States have broadband planning mechanisms already. And Texas, unfortunately, is not one of those 44. So we need to catch up in our state, and we need to put forth a guiding light, really, for whether that be schools or government or private sector, to basically come all in on a unified approach. So, you can kind of see there's pages and pages of representatives who have signed this letter. And we feel that going into 2021, especially here in Austin, is going to be a really good opportunity to continue building support for this much needed policy that we need here in the state of Texas. So what I was proposing here is To build support for this cause, we're encouraging members of the general membership of the DIASA to support these calls to action by contacting your state representative, state senator, and Governor Abbott by phone or email, and let them know you support the development of the Texas broadband plan. You know, make them known, saying, hey, we saw that you responded to this letter, and our organization, you know, wants you to follow through with that. Please don't let it just stop with a letter to the governor. We want you to follow through, and somebody introduce these bills. We need co-sponsors. We need the committees to take this seriously, and we need them to get passed by the House and the Senate and ultimately signed by the governor. Secondly, you know, reach out to your local elected officials. I know that a lot of local delegations that get ready every fall leading into a preceding legislative session. They usually develop legislative platforms and a wish list of what a county or an organization can seek to get out of the next upcoming session. So let your local officials know that you support the cause to get this broadband plan passed here in the state of Texas, and to let them know to please support the work of our state legislators and policymakers to get this done. I included a real brief little example paragraph that you guys can copy and paste into social media. By all means, you could use whatever language you want. We're just kind of providing this here for reference. But if you want to do a post with TX Broadband Plan 2021, or TX Digital Divide, or TX Close the Divide. And then lastly, I know I did this for the last two legislative sessions, is that I created my own bill trackers using the state of Texas legislature online, and it's relatively easy to do. So I plan on setting up a bill tracker as soon as bills start getting introduced, and I think we can anticipate that probably middle of November, if not right after the election. So as soon as this bills start getting introduced in the 87th legislature, I'll be sure to share that update in a future meeting with the General Membership Alliance. So I just want to make sure that you all know that we're probably anticipating a bunch of broadband and digital divide related bills in this coming session. And I think the more informed that we're all together, the easier that we can kind of jump into action. So thank you for supporting our call to action. And I think the next part of our agenda now is a highlight of one of our member organizations with BiblioTech, where Ms. Laura Cole will be presenting to talk about her organization. So thank you so much.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to talk about BiblioTech. I always love to be able to do that. BiblioTech has been continuing in its sort of marching forward through COVID in its useful course to Bexar County. You know, we're an all digital public library, and in 2013, when we opened the library, people, you know, used to talk about it as if it were the library of the future, but nobody was thinking the future as 2020. Nobody was thinking about the future of 2020 being the pandemic that we're currently facing. And so what we found is there really is no better way for us to be able to deliver library services than what we're currently doing. You know, obviously all of our library content is digital. We don't have any print material. So it's all available, and it has never ceased to be available throughout the pandemic. When we had to close our operations down in March, we really knew that we were going to be doing, that our communities were going to suffer because they rely on us so heavily. Our branches are located intentionally in challenged areas, places where people don't have digital access. We know that, that's why we're there. So when we cut off that service, it was, we wanted to get back up and running as quickly as possible. And we were able to do that. We're doing that now. We're operating still at 25% capacity simply because our branches are small and we can't maintain social distance with heavier populations than that. We also wanted to make sure that everybody was safe in our branches. So we limit our computer sessions right now to 1 hour. We don't want people to spend too much time there, so we're really sort of functionally focused. You know, you're going to come in, you're going to conduct your transaction, whatever it is. You're going to fill out your application. You're going to, you know, apply for unemployment. You're going to apply for your job. We're there to assist you with that. That's one thing that we have not stopped doing, is providing assistance, personal assistance. We do it from a distance now, but we're still able to do that. We don't require any kind of reservation. People are you know, can be free to walk in whenever they like. we realized we didn't want a lot of people touching things like printers and scanners and things like that. So we're doing all of that for our patrons now. We're doing it free of charge. It's just easier that way, and it's something that we can do. We're happy to be able to do that. We started out our hours as just 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Now we're expanding those hours again. We're getting back to a more normal hours of operation. And one of the things that we really wanted to be able to do was increase those hours so we could go back to doing GED testing, which has been very, very important. GED testing is one of those things that people need that, and we offer it for free. We're in a partnership with Toyota, so we're able to administer GED tests at no cost to the patron, which is very exciting. Again, you know, we circulate hotspots, and we knew that was important. We circulate Kindles with internet. We've had people come in with their students. You know, the schools might be out of Chromebooks, and we heard this a couple times. You know, my child's school doesn't have any more Chromebooks, and for those of you, and many of you probably know, Chromebooks are backordered now. People can't get them till the beginning of 2021, and so if a student didn't receive their device, you know, how are they gonna connect? So while ours is not the ideal solution, it will get them hooked up. And you know, and I've got such a love-hate relationship with hotspots right now. I really do, because first of all, they are fulfilling a very, very critical need. It is important that we get people connected, and we can do that quickly. And CARES funding has allowed us to expand that program exponentially. What I don't like about it is it's obvious. First of all, it's difficult to administer, but secondly, you know, it's an imperfect solution. You've got to assign a device to a person, make sure they get it. There's the way to make, you know, it's not favorable in terms of a long-term solution, but it's needed and it's necessary. The other thing too is we've got distribution issues. We've only got 3 branches. So how are we going to distribute those? We were able to partner with our suburban city libraries, and with CARES funding, Leon Valley, Schertz, Universal City, and Converse, the only other 4 cities in Bexar County that operate libraries, we were able to get them hotspots, so they're now able to circulate those. And they have had some they have expressed real critical need for those as well. So that's a good thing. But in a longer term solution, we're looking to create we're working in partnership with Southwest ISD and Southwest Research Institute to do a pilot project on a much smaller scale than the cities. We're only going to be reaching about 100 students, but we're getting it up and running by the end of December. Actually, getting it up and running by the beginning of December, excuse me. So we can have a full 30-day to 45-day evaluation period, take a look and see how feasible this is, what the cost of it is, what the cost per student ends up being, and see if this isn't something that we can look to expand. We're primarily focused on rural areas because that's the county's need. You know, we've got a lot of unincorporated areas. Some of our unincorporated rural areas are also economically challenged. So we're kind of hitting two birds with one stone there. So we're working on that. I'm very excited about that, working on it daily. Finally, and I don't want to take up anybody's time anymore, but I've got one more thing that I want to mention as long as I've got an audience. And this isn't so much about digital inclusion as it is about BiblioTech. We have created a platform that local musicians can contribute to, so that we can feature the sounds of San Antonio, also provide a venue for local bands who may not be able to have their music heard right now because places are closed down, they don't have a place to play, and quite frankly, I think audiences need a little lift. So we have San Antonio Soundstage. If you know any local bands, I would also like this platform to be a place where we can tell the very rich history of San Antonio's music and musical contributions. So expanding that, we're looking to have a concert to benefit, with all of these musicians, to benefit the family justice courts in the spring. So if you know any musicians, please send them our way. San Antonio Soundstage on the BiblioTech website. Thanks.
That is so cool, Laura.
I know,
I'm so
it is.
excited to hear
Isn't
about
it?
that.
Really, I
Not
think
just
it's
because I
so
love
cool.
music, but that's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah. We've got
What a way to,
several contributions already.
that is amazing. I will definitely see if I can find some musicians to see if we can support that cause, because that is just amazing. And I think a lot of folks who know musicians know how impacted they have been by not being
Right.
able to perform and all that good stuff. But we want to sustain their art. I know we only have a few minutes. Does anybody have any questions for our highlight member organization, BiblioTech, and Miss Laura Cole?
Hey, Laura, it's Ron. I do have a quick question for you.
Yes.
You spoke about providing digital access, and the San Antonio Public Library, likewise, when we had to shutter our physical access to the collection, we of course doubled down in our investment in digital, and we've noticed since the pandemic started exponential growth in use of the collection.
Yeah.
And my question to you primarily is: have you seen that same sort of growth pattern, and have you been able to attract a new audience, new people to use the collection? Because at San Antonio, while we've seen such heavy growth in terms of utilization of items, it's been a little slower with getting new people into the collection and using it. And I think part of that is so related to the digital divide. We tried to do so much marketing to make awareness of the collection an easy thing to discover. At the same time, individuals who are affected by the divide, no matter how much outreach you do, no matter how much investment in the collection you make, if you can't get connected at home, it's hard to use.
Yeah, so here's a couple of facts, and this is very consistent with what you just said. Our main ebook platform, our year-over-year circulation of that one platform increased 68% because of the pandemic. Our registrations are down, but our usage is heavy. So people that are already registered are becoming regular users, not to mention our active learning platforms in some cases have gone up like 1,000%. And it's because people are looking to reskill. So our things like our coding programs, our lynda.com, our universal class, those are going through the roof and have been. I mean, seriously, over 1,000% in some cases. So, but I think you're right. I think our branches have been closed. So our registration, we do a lot of on-site registration at our branches. We have not been able to offer that in the same volume. Also, our outreach team, who normally goes out and does all kinds of community events, there haven't been those events. So that's where we get a lot of our registrations from. And again, if you don't have access at home, how are you gonna do that? So I appreciate hearing from you on that, Ron, because we are experiencing the same thing. We are actually looking right now at how we're going to engage those folks when we can't do it in the ways that we've been doing it.
Laura, real quick, you mentioned the fact that you guys offer GED testing, and I have heard from folks that are very in the workforce development space and the economic development space who are a little bit worried, because they say that nowadays when companies are looking to kind of relocate in new markets, they used to ask a lot about infrastructure. They used to say, hey, what utilities access do I have? But really top of that list now is workforce development. And without people getting these GED tests, that could have a pretty big impact in our community's workforce development, correct?
It's really just slowing everything down, right? Because there are a limited number of test sites throughout the city that are available, and those hours are eaten up quickly. I mean, we were administering between our two branches probably between 15 and 20 test takers per week. So sometimes they would take multiple units. I mean, it was a very, very active program for us and very needed. So we're happy to be able to start doing that again.
Yeah.
And Toyota has been very sensitive to the fact that, sorry, we just can't do it right now. And I appreciate their staying with us and supporting us regardless, with the understanding that we will get back to it as soon as we can.
We thank you, and we thank BiblioTech for being such a key resource for digital inclusion in our community. And, for organizations who are joining us today, who maybe haven't been part of our general membership in a while or new to the organization, we want to do these focuses after every or during every general membership meeting. So if you want to be the next one to make a presentation to the membership, just as Laura did about BiblioTech, please feel free. We want to highlight the work that you all are doing in the city of San Antonio and perhaps even beyond. So thank you, Laura, for that. And we're getting at the tail end here. And Mr. Adana, I think they had you programmed for closing remarks. So I'm not sure if they told you about that or if you would still like to deliver that. But please, you take it away.
I'll just say great presentation by Terrence, Scott, and Laura. A wonderful presentation. It really just gives the example, I think, that Terrence mentioned of how important partnership is in this work, because you get to bring out the best in your community and really understanding, the assets in the community. And that's what Digital Inclusion Alliance San Antonio is all about. So I love to just see it in action, and they're great presentations. And then Laura, wow, the inclusion of artists and our being able to feature them, and that creative thinking, is incredible. I mean, we have, for example, the Esperanza Center, Lourdes Perez did that recording and book on our elders and actually the music of the West Side. So you could look there as one incredible thing. It's called Still Here, and the Esperanza Center was the one that sponsored that. But that's just a beautiful example of how we can pull together as a community, even in the times of, our darkest times, which this pandemic has been so difficult. So with that, Renee, I'll just turn it back to you. It's been great to see and great to get together again as a big group. And I look forward to scheduling the regular meetings with the big group.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jordana, for those closing remarks. And once again, thank you for everybody who joined us today. Very thankful for all of you. Our next scheduled general membership meeting is November the 20th. So as we get closer to that event, we will send out an announcement via email with who our guest speakers will be. And as I mentioned, if you want to be one of the highlight member organizations for that call or any call that we have going into 2021, we want to showcase your work here. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're very thankful. And let's get all this work done, because we have a lot of work to do as digital inclusion advocates and supporters and doers in our community. So thank you very much, everybody. Hope you have a wonderful day. And I guess we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.